All right, so we've got a super interesting article here from LinkedIn, and it's pretty timely with Climate Week NYC happening right now.
Really is.
It's titled, "The Earth is Perishable. Will You Act Before It's Too Late? The Peak End Rule. How It Can Save the Planet, and Why You Need to Know."
Hmm.
And, I got to say, using a psychological principle, this whole peak end rule thing, to rethink how we approach climate action.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool angle, right?
It's fascinating, actually. And, it makes a lot of sense. So for anyone who's not familiar, the peak end rule basically says that the way we remember experiences is really shaped by two main things.
Okay.
The most intense point, the peak.
Right, the high point, yeah.
Exactly. And then how the whole thing wrapped up, the end.
Interesting.
And this idea, it was actually explored by Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winner.
Oh, wow.
And so this article takes that concept and asks this really provocative question. Can we use this to make climate action more impactful, make it stick with people more?
It's like instead of those kind of forgettable everyday actions,
Right.
we actually create these lasting memories around being more environmentally conscious.
Exactly.
And the coolest part is it breaks it down on all these different levels, like personal changes, what businesses can do, even how this could work on a societal scale, which is huge, right?
It is. And, a good way to think about it, it's like when you go on vacation, right? You probably don't remember every single day equally.
No, definitely not.
It's that amazing concert you stumbled upon, or that incredible meal you had, or even just getting home without any hiccups. Those are the things that really stick with you.
It's so true. It's those little moments.
Exactly. And that's essentially what this article is suggesting we try to replicate. Those sticky memories, but for things we do that are good for the environment.
I love it. So it's about making those eco-friendly actions something that we actually look forward to, something we want to experience again, not just something we feel obligated to do.
Right, because who wants to feel like they're constantly sacrificing or missing out to save the planet? This is about making it enjoyable, even exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And the article uses this term green peaks, which I really like.
Okay.
So instead of, say, just biking to work, because it's the right thing to do, you find a way to turn that commute into an experience.
I like that.
Maybe you discover this really scenic route, or you really focus on how good it feels to be outside, moving your body, getting that fresh air.
It's about shifting the focus from obligation to enjoyment.
Right.
Making it something you actually want to do again and again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about our individual choices either.
Yeah.
The article talks about businesses going green, and they use this example of instead of just like, oh, let's swap out all our light bulbs for energy efficient ones, which don't get me wrong, that's great.
It's a start.
But they're saying make it an event. Celebrate that transition as a company. Get everyone involved. Make it a shared experience, a positive association.
It's like we did this together.
Exactly. And they even take it a step further to the societal level.
Okay, now that's interesting.
And their example is super relevant. They talk about Climate Week NYC.
Right, which is going on as we speak.
Exactly. And the article argues that to really make an impact, to make these events stick in people's minds, they need to be about more than just talk. It needs to be about tangible outcomes.
Oh, I see. So it's not enough to just raise awareness. It's about creating real concrete change.
Exactly. Because those are the things we remember,
Yeah.
right? Those moments of significant shift, those turning points.
It makes you think about Climate Week NYC a bit differently.
Right. It's about making climate action something that people feel invested in, not just something they know they should care about.
It's about action, not just awareness.
Exactly. And a big part of that, according to the article, is not just focusing on that peak experience, but also thinking about the end, which sounds a little strange at first, but...
Okay, I'm intrigued. How do you mean the end?
So they use this analogy of comparing the Earth to perishable organic food.
Okay, that is an interesting comparison. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Right. But it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Think about it. When you have organic food, you want to enjoy it at its freshest, right? That's your peak.
Makes sense.
But then when you compost the scraps, you're participating in the natural cycle. It becomes this mindful action that's all part of valuing that whole experience.
I see.
It's not just about consuming. It's about understanding and respecting where things come from and where they go after we're done with them.
So how do we apply that same kind of thinking to something as big and complex as, well, the Earth?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
All right, you've got me hooked. Tell me more.
Well, the article kind of throws us a curveball here.
Yeah. It starts talking about how even with all these renewable energy sources we hear about, solar, wind, all that,
Right.
there are limitations.
Okay, so it's not just as simple as, like, swapping out all the coal plants for solar panels.
That's kind of what they're getting at, yeah. Like, those things are super important. Don't get me wrong. The article isn't saying they're not.
Right.
But it does make you think, are those solutions alone really enough to deal with this whole climate crisis? It's a big question.
It's a huge question.
Mm.
And I feel like that's where things often get, I don't know, kind of politically charged.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
the article brings up nuclear power.
Which, you're right, can be a pretty controversial topic.
Right. Like, people have really strong opinions about it on both sides.
Yeah, totally. And to be fair, the article acknowledges that. It doesn't shy away from the complexities at all.
Okay, so how does it handle that then?
Well, it kind of lays it all out there, both sides of the coin. So on the one hand, you've got those safety concerns, right? Nuclear disasters, the whole issue of waste disposal, that stuff's real and people have every right to be concerned about it.
Right. That's heavy stuff.
It is, for sure. But then on the flip side, the article also points out, nuclear power is incredibly efficient when you compare it to other energy sources.
That's true.
And the carbon footprint is way lower.
Way lower, yeah.
Plus, you got to consider the technology itself. It's come a long way since those big accidents happened, back in the day.
So where does that leave us then? Like, what are they ultimately suggesting?
Well, it's not about necessarily advocating for one side or the other. It's more about, I think, getting us to ask those tough questions.
Okay, I like that.
Like, can we really afford to just take nuclear power off the table entirely, just write it off?
Given what we're facing with the climate, yeah.
Exactly. Is that actually a bigger risk in the long run?
Interesting.
The article isn't saying it has all the answers, but it's definitely pushing us to have that conversation, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, because sometimes I think, are we so afraid of those difficult conversations that we end up limiting our options for solutions?
That's a really good point. Like, if we're serious about tackling climate change, we have to be open to exploring all the possibilities, right?
Right.
Even the ones that we might not initially like or agree with.
It's about thinking critically, weighing the pros and cons, being open to learning and adapting as we go.
Exactly. And maybe, honestly, that's a good lesson for this whole climate action thing in general,
What do you mean?
Like, it's not about finding that one perfect solution, because there probably isn't one.
Right.
It's more about being flexible, being willing to try things out, being open to solutions that maybe we didn't even think of before.
So how do we do that? How do we actually move beyond all the, entrenched positions and actually find some common ground? Because this is big. This is about the planet. It's not just theoretical.
It's huge. And honestly, it starts with listening to each other, really listening.
Okay.
Not just waiting for your turn to talk, but truly trying to understand where the other person is coming from, even if you don't agree with them.
Easier said than done, right?
Mm.
Especially these days. It feels like everything's so polarized.
Oh, absolutely. It takes conscious effort, no doubt. But it goes back to that idea of connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Like we were talking about with the perishable Earth idea.
Exactly. If we can remember that we're all sharing this planet and we all want a good future for ourselves, for our kids, for everyone.
Right. That's something we can all agree on.
Exactly. That shared goal, it can be a really powerful motivator to find some common ground, even when it's tough.
It's about recognizing that we're not that different at the end of the day.
We're all in this together, like it or not.
It's about finding those shared values, those points of connection, and then, building bridges instead of walls.
Because that's how we create real, lasting change. Not by shouting at each other, but by working together.
Which, at the end of the day, isn't that what it's all about? Creating a future where both people and the planet can thrive. That's a vision worth striving for, even if it means having some tough conversations along the way.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think that's something this article really drives home.
How so?
It's not just about those individual actions like recycling or biking to work, as important as those things are. It's bigger than that. It's about changing the way we think, the way we talk about these issues, how we treat each other,
So it's like a whole mindset shift.
Exactly. Like, instead of all the doom and gloom, what if we focused on the positive? What's possible if we work together?
Instead of fear and scarcity, it's about hope and abundance.
Yes. Because if we really want to create a better future, we have to believe it's possible.
We have to hold on to that hope, even when things feel tough.
And remember that we all have the power to make a difference. in our own ways.
And that's a powerful message, especially during Climate Week NYC.
The whole world's watching, hoping for real progress.
Exactly. And it reminds us that we all have a part to play in that, no matter how small it might seem.
Because those small actions, they add up.
They really do. So as we're going about our days, let's try to remember that.
Let's choose to lead with hope, with love for this planet we call home.
Because we only get one.
And it's up to us to take care of it.
It's like what we were talking about before, right? This whole idea of the Earth being perishable, not this infinite resource we can just take for granted.
Right, like that really changes how we see things, doesn't it?
Totally. And I feel like it connects to how we have these conversations about climate action, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about like, okay, how much can we extract? How much can we consume?
Right.
It's about how do we relate to this planet? How do we take care of it?
It's about respect. Right.
Exactly. And I think that's what the article is getting at with that line about, if our own survival doesn't drive us to change, perhaps the love for all life on Earth will.
It's powerful, right?
It is. And it might sound a little, I don't know, maybe a little too idealistic or something.
Yeah, like a little out there.
Maybe. But sometimes we need those big radical ideas.
To shake things up a bit.
Totally. And this idea of leading with love instead of fear. I mean, think about it. Even with those green peaks we were talking about earlier.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
What if those moments, those joyful experiences of connecting with nature, feeling that sense of awe and wonder, what if those became the driving force behind how we live our lives?
Okay, so instead of focusing on everything we think we have to give up, it's about focusing on what we gain by living more sustainably.
Yes. It's about tapping into that sense of gratitude, that love for this planet, and letting that be our guide.
It's a totally different way of approaching it, that's for sure.
Because when we act from a place of love, not fear, it changes everything. Our energy, our approach, the whole experience becomes more sustainable, honestly.
It's like we were saying earlier, making it joyful, making it something we want to do, not something we feel forced to do.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe it even opens us up to solutions we hadn't even considered before.
Because we're not so stuck in that scarcity mindset.
Right. Exactly. We're coming from a place of abundance, of possibility.
And that feels really hopeful, especially during Climate Week NYC, with the whole world watching, hoping for, some sign of real progress.
It's a good reminder that we all have a part to play in that our actions, even the small ones, they ripple outwards.
So as we go about our days, let's try to remember that. Let's make the choice to act from a place of love, of hope, of respect for this planet.
Because it's the only one we've got.
Exactly. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive. A huge thank you to you, expert speaker, for sharing your insights with us. This was a great conversation.
It was my pleasure. Really enjoyed it.
And to all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought, maybe challenged some assumptions, and hopefully left you feeling inspired to go out there and make a difference. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep cherishing this amazing planet we all share.